Hello, I'm Nina Simons, based in Seattle, Washington. I'm an executive coach, and with me is Connie Tingson-Gatuz, Dr. Connie.
Hi, Nina. So happy to see you and be here with you. And I'm coming from Michigan.
Yes, you are. We're hitting the coast today, or almost, and you are the state chair of the ACE network. Will you tell our listeners a little bit about that women's network?
Yeah, I'm happy to. There's a national organization called the American College and Education, and it's been an advocacy professional organization for many years, really putting out research about higher ed and working on different policy areas. And so I am state chair of a chapter for the state of Michigan, which is comprised of several colleges and universities as members. So we hold many, many different activities throughout the year, largely focused on moving the needle to increase women leaders in higher education, particularly at the executive level, but then all throughout mid and even entry level too. So it's exciting. Yeah, the mission is focused on advancing women.
Love it. Love
Yeah,
it. And it
yeah,
makes total sense. There's so many women getting advanced degrees or just in education. So why not have us do well?
absolutely. And try to match the proportion of how many are actually studying in
Yes.
higher education and actually leading those organizations. Pretty good.
Beautiful. Beau- Um, well, this conversation is happening because I had you come on the podcast, Let's Get Real. And we had a wonderful conversation about leadership and your
Hmm.
philosophy. And one of the topics that we touched on but didn't get to dive into much was just the power and importance of mentorship,
Hmm.
especially for advancing people, whether they're women or people of
Hmm.
color or anybody who has been
Hmm.
underrepresented in leadership up to this point. And it's true in higher education, just as it is in the corporate world where I do a lot of work. So,
Hmm.
um, so tell me a little bit more about how you approach mentorship. Like, what's important to you?
So, my thoughts about mentorship is very interconnected with leadership development. And I think they're very interdependent on one another. I think leaders don't just automatically become leaders. I think they're guided by others. And so that comes in the form of mentorship. And sometimes it's leaders mentoring leaders along the way. And sometimes it's those that are emerging. But I have this kind of abbreviated way of remembering, what mentorship really comes down to. And I call it the 3 I's, which is investing in others, influencing others, and inspiring others. And I kind of have lots of examples to demonstrate those ways to do that, to kind of keep it front and center so that I'm reminded of them in the process.
Hmm.
Um,
Beautiful, beautiful.
yeah.
I really like that, and I get a lot of questions because I'm a coach educator about
Mm,
the difference between coaching and mentoring. And I actually think they're very connected. And I think that coaching skills can actually really help mentors
mhm,
be more. I got an interesting, I forgot to tell you this. I got an email from one of our listeners who was talking about how hard it is to find good mentors, and that
mhm,
in his experience, this young man was talking about how getting people who have something to share that you don't already know, or they
mhm,
assume that you don't know things when you do already know. And so that was
mhm,
something that I thought, well, yeah, it sounded like that mentor wasn't really being curious or finding out, who wasn't doing that investment piece, right? Like, and so
mhm, mhm.
what do you recommend for people who are wanting to be good mentors, or like, what is investing in your mentees mean to you besides giving your time, of course?
Yeah, I mean, time is precious, right? It's something you don't get back, and it does show what you value. I
Hmm.
think that investing in others really comes down to your commitment to their success. And if you're gonna be committed to their success, it means that you're committed to learning who they are and what they need,
Mm,
what they want, as opposed to what you know. And sometimes
mhm.
those don't match. And so, mentors, people in general know a lot of things, but that doesn't mean what they know is exactly what the individuals need. And so I think really creating a custom experience does require investment, much like
Mm.
financial investing. We don't just throw money at the wind and just say good luck. I think we take our time, we research, we look into it, we get to know more information before we make a good decision. And I think similar to mentorship, you do similar things, is that you take the time to get to know the person, what
Yeah,
really what moves them, what they're looking for. And I think being able to respond in that way makes it more impactful.
absolutely, absolutely, and, it can seem like it's an ego thing for people to be sharing first, but I do think it's also what I've noticed when we're teaching adults, um, in the classroom is that it can be challenging for people to feel like they wanna add value right away.
Mhm.
And so they feel this pressure or like they've asked me to be their mentor, so I really need to come up with some stuff. And so I love this idea of ask first, like what does this mentee want and need from a mentorship? And even just showing an interest in people
Mhm.
can be validating, right? Especially coming from a more experienced or a role of authority. When you take that time with folks, even that alone, giving them that attention is so valuable.
It goes such a long way, right? I mean,
Yeah,
even just being the time and the attentiveness to what they have to say, whatever it is,
yeah.
right? Yeah, for
Beautiful. So
sure.
tell me more
Yeah.
about influence, because that one was, more surprising to me. So how does influence show up in a mentoring relationship?
So, I think influence starts with what you value, what you care about. And
Mm,
so,
mm.
there are many influencers. In fact, it's a profession now on social media.
This is
But what
true.
right? But what I hope to do in the mentorship experience is to influence others to not only focus on self and them as individuals, but also the collective. Right? I
Mm,
can do that, is while we're talking about maybe what their needs are, we can start to think about topics that affect a greater good, and I do think that comes in
mm,
the form of influence, right, with what you value. If you value community, if you value, um, being intentional about how you spend your time and energy, things that promote good in the world, um,
mm,
I think those are ways to influence others in subtle ways. Doesn't mean you have to be in agreement on every topic under the moon, but I do think that, it's really influencing a choice of picking love over fear. And
mm,
sometimes decisions get made, oftentimes under pressure. We operate under fear just because it's human nature to be afraid of losing a job, to be afraid of losing a loved one or someone you care about. And so you operate in that mode, but trying to influence others to say, look, if you have energy, which is you have a choice in what kind of energy you put out there. Put out good energy, right? Doesn't always
mm,
mean that everything's perfect or positive, but energy that's life-giving as opposed to
mm.
depleting. And I do think that's a way to influence others is how they show up. I
Nice.
gave an example the other day of sometimes you have lunch with somebody and you get to choose who you get
Mhm,
wanna spend your time with, and those that zap your energy, you can influence others to turn a conversation around when you see them spiraling in a conversation and everything is daunting and everything is gray and the world is collapsing, and try to turn that and say, "Well, in that challenge, what's the opportunity?" You could pose a question to influence them to do a little shift in their thinking
mhm.
and try to say, "What can we do with this?" As opposed to feeling helpless.
Oh my
But
gosh.
I do believe influence matters
That totally. I love, that example, and boy, we do need that right now, right? We need
more
to
than
be
ever.
optimistic. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
hope does that, right? I mean, we have knowledge of things, but I don't have to have the answer to everything. And
Right.
I do think that the only way to influence is for people to have trust and credibility. If I
Mm.
demonstrate trust, I've earned it, and I am a credible source, then I think I have a greater likelihood of being able to influence them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that makes sense. And I know that networking is a huge part of how you mentor, and you just got back from a conference, right? And
I
were
did,
you
I
did
did.
that feel like an opportunity for influence?
It was wonderful. I was at a student success conference in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I think you just the learning lesson that I came back from, I literally flew back yesterday, is you never know what the opportunities are, and the key is to stay
Mhm.
open to them. So I had this wonderful opportunity to meet a colleague who I'd never met before, who came from the Philippines and works in higher education, and we were connected through someone else who was at the conference. And sometimes you go to conferences and don't really get to spend in-depth time, but in a very quick way, we were able to exchange ideas, and she invited me to come to the Philippines next year, which is so exciting that, and I have been doing that in other ways, over the years, but I'm really excited to be able to do that, and I suspect, as she told me in her words, it was some of what I shared with her about the work that I've been doing, and I think that is a way to influence, right? Is to kinda share what you do, what you care about, and I think people find one another when they share and align in those, values and ideas, and then you create something.
Love it.
Yeah,
And I was hearing values too. So part of it's like, for those who are thinking about mentoring, like where do you want to make a difference, and finding communities where you really have a stake in the game.
absolutely, absolutely. Let me, explain, and, I know that when one of the things I think about in my field is, it's not just me in the profession, is I wanna create a pipeline, for those that are gonna come into the work and are gonna take these roles and take it to the next level. And my hope is that by investing in them and influencing their thinking and spending time with them and sharing what I know, that when they enter the field or go into these roles, they're gonna continue and carry on this goal of creating a pipeline, right? Of investing in the future. Because that's the idea of mentorship, is it's generativity, right? Is that you create, you generate, you create, you then mentor others who then in turn hopefully will mentor other people. And then it becomes this gift that keeps giving. It doesn't just end with that one interaction.
Well, Connie, you are a generative leader. Excuse my cough.
Thank,
I had to
thank
go on
you.
mute.
No, I understand. It's that season.
Yeah, yeah. But that idea of, I mean, we've heard pay it forward before, but this
Mhm,
idea that you're investing and inspiring the next generation of mentors,
mhm, mhm.
and that you can do that by believing in them and by making the time, and I love that. You're so
Thank
inspiring.
you. Thank you.
And
Thank
that
you.
actually, yeah, let's talk more about inspiring.
Yeah.
How do you
Um,
inspire in your mentorship?
so I think we talked about values, right? And when I think about some of the roles that I've had in moments of challenge, you really have to dig deep about what you really value. And that should guide your decisions. Not always, but it should be, at least your core doesn't change. And there may be times where you have to make decisions that don't always perfectly align. But at the end of the day, for example, dignity and respect is a value that I carry, dignity and respect for others. And so even if I have to deliver bad news, even if I have to challenge someone's thinking, as long as I maintain in my mind dignity and respect, my hope is that they'll hear the message and not be distracted with any delivery that makes them feel a certain way, right? And I think that's important in how you inspire. I don't think everything's rosy and perfect. I do think there's challenge. In fact, this work is very challenging, but I also believe that there's got to be a path forward, and we have to constantly look for that path forward. We need to make it better than we found it. It seems so. I don't try to be cliche, but I try to use simple phrases that get to the point. Of
Yeah,
inspiring is in your actions. Inspiring is, even if I mess up, that I have an opportunity to reinvent myself and change the next time around. I hope that I'm not judged by one data point, but that there's multiple opportunities. And sometimes you don't always get that second opportunity, but you do the best you can with what you have in the time you have it. But if I do get those chances, I try to demonstrate, I could have done better. And I think even
mm,
being receptive to feedback, even when it could be constructive criticism, it could be, you said something that really bothered me. To be open to receiving that
yeah,
is important. It's not just hearing the positive comments, but also that's where I grow as a mentor,
Mm,
but also where they grow,
yeah.
because then they can see how I respond, right? It's modeling that.
Yes,
Um,
I was just thinking role modeling is
yeah,
huge, and you're
absolutely.
doing that all the time, and I love that, and that's actually how I got connected to you, is I
Mhm.
just so appreciated. You weren't the most talkative person in the group that we were in, but when
No,
you spoke, you had, you were really listening, you highlighted things that were important, you did focus on the positive. So you're leading by example. You helped set the tone for that group.
thank you. I feel like I've gained a lot from those experiences too, and that's why I was listening so much. And sometimes people push me to say things first, and it may
Yeah.
be a little bit, but I just so value what to hear what people have to say, and I want to add value too. Um, yeah,
Well, we all have to step outside of our comfort zone.
yeah,
So whether it's being the quiet one or being the first one to speak, like learning that there are
we
roles
can
and
stretch.
benefits to being in
Yeah,
both chairs for sure. And I
yeah.
love the idea of having it be open feedback. And so I would also recommend that anyone who's going to be in a mentoring role that you check in with people periodically. How's it going?
Mhm.
What could I do differently? What else do you need? So it's not a static relationship,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, and the key is don't ask what you're not willing to hear. 'Cause I think
Mhm.
sometimes we go through the motions, you pass someone, "Hey, how are you?" You don't really mean that, then try not to ask because then you might not people can tell if you
Yeah,
really wanna hear what they have to say, and I think that's the authenticity part of it. But I do think mentorship is such a key ingredient to our community. We all need mentors, we benefit from them, but we
yeah,
also have to return it. It may
yes,
not be the very same person that
right.
also benefited us. It could be, but I think, we can do that in different ways and in different forms, and it's funny because someone was just saying to me recently, professional development, leadership development is really based on who you know. They invest
Yeah.
in you because you get the benefit of successful people because you have this network of successful
Mm,
people. And, my response was, but don't you think that attracts that? I mean, I don't
yeah,
think successful people are attracted to those that don't really care about creating. So I think it's a
yeah.
two-way street. And
It
I
builds
was
on
using
itself, it
it
sounds
builds on
like.
itself, and I was trying to use this example, and I know, you've heard of degrees of separation, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
people always say, "Who knows who?" In fact, they did a funny one about Kevin Bacon, right? And who
Oh,
knows who to get to who to
yeah.
Kevin
We're all
Bacon.
just 6 degrees away from
We're
Kevin
all just
Bacon.
6 degrees, right? And so just again to my point about reframing, I had shared, well, what if we rather than thinking about it of degrees of separation, what if we thought about degrees of connectedness? Because it's not really what
Mm,
separates us, it's what
yes.
connects us. And
Beautiful.
and when you think along those lines, you realize the world isn't as big as we think it is. I think that
Yes.
there are ways in which, just like the example I gave, to meet this professional colleague from the Philippines at a conference that I had no intentions of meeting, it's just kind of I don't call it random, but I think you could be in the same space. There are 600 people there, but the
Yeah.
chances of meeting this person and then being able to find connection, I think is that example of connectedness, right? And then it's
Yes.
up to us to continue it and not just be a one-time interaction. So,
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, so sustaining momentum, following up. I
yeah,
also, really do like, to your point about who's benefiting, I think the mentors we benefit so much when we're in
absolutely.
those that end of the conversation, in some ways, maybe more because there's nothing more fulfilling than feeling like you're making the difference with for someone, right?
Yes, if you
Yeah.
allow it. I think
Yeah.
I think the caveat to that is it can
Mm.
be, ego boosting and gratifying
Mm.
to feel like I am the mentor and I have imparted knowledge, and, that is one way to look at it, and I am grateful to be able to have knowledge to be able to share, but I think there's also a humility to it, to say that I should be able to learn too, right? I should be in a learning mindset too, Because I don't think there's anybody that knows everything about everything, and I think that
Exactly.
you just never know where the learning can occur. And I
Yeah.
have found many times where someone has an expertise in something that may not be in the
Mm.
position, right,
Yes.
of experience, but have had other experiences in their lives that can help one another.
Yes.
That's why I think peer mentorship is also really valuable too. It doesn't always have to come from someone more seasoned. It just
No.
come from someone with a different set of experiences that help you develop. It's like learning piano. I mean, I
Amen.
don't just automatically learn piano, I have to go to people who've practiced it,
Yeah.
right? And similarly
Really
to
do
the
think
field.
we need to redefine, like, even if you look up mentorship, it makes it sound like junior, senior,
It
and I
does,
really do think it is about experience, and it's about sharing of ourselves, and it's about
yeah,
connectedness, and moving away from these hierarchical models. So just another
yeah,
example of busting cultural norms, right?
absolutely. We need to make space for lots of different ways to connect, and if we do that, I think there's a higher likelihood of mentorship to grow and develop and for more people to benefit from it. In fact, the research tells us that informal mentorship is actually the most effective, even though there are organizations that will build formal mentorship programs, which also has a place. But I think it's complementary, not a substitute for. And I think that tells us a lot. It's more
It
organic.
does. It does. So as we close, because of my terrible cough,
Yeah,
you've been
yeah,
wonderful. Maybe my our hope is that this will be inspirational for people who are thinking about mentoring. Don't wait for a formal mentoring program to come knocking on your
yes,
door.
yes. Seek it out and
Find your
create it.
mentors. Exactly. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much, Connie, for being here.
Thank you, Nina. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you.
You'll find us on YouTube as well as LinkedIn.
Take care.